End of the day, they are destructive individuals with no conscience with the potential to eradicate the human existence because their innate desire to destroy, emotionally slaughter, maim, and butcher. They are only able to do this because we are not recognizing and labeling them correctly. In my estimation, discovering and shining the spotlight on sociopaths and other personality disorders greatly reduces the harm they cause, and best of all, they hate it. We should take special note to screen these types of individuals from positions of public trust such as police, government, judicial positions most notably. However, it appears these toxic personalities are almost a requirement for all three of the aforementioned. Maybe this explains why most policemen turn into pathological liars when trying to trick and bully you into admitting to a traffic violation or crimes you didn't commit. What other kind of person would look for a position where they have a license to disrupt and ruin your life on lies? Is it possible this is why they are unjustifiably killing people for the least of reasons? Even worse, maybe this explains why they're not being held accountable by the judicial systems for their despicable and cowardly actions. Just maybe this would explain some or all of the decisions being made by local, state, and federal legislators. Maybe these types of personalities are the reasons this country, as well as the globe, is spiraling out of control. Removing these depraved entities from our midst would most assuredly improve our society overnight, literally. Most of them would end up in the insane asylums and not the people they target if you were to heed the warnings in this chapter. My interactions with these people finally pushed me over the edge of indecision to write this book. They have covertly infiltrated and negatively influenced our society at all levels. Their malicious acts are the reason societies crumble and collapse once they have taken control of the power structure. Initially, they are extremely hard to detect because, well, it's hard to really know what they are because they generally look and act as normal, sane, thinking people do. In a lot of cases, unfortunately, you can find them hiding in positions of trust and authority because they are such great pretenders. Sometimes it is even difficult for the medical professionals to ascertain their true personality. They do this by lying and mimicking our emotions, our routine emotions and behaviors, which is why we unknowingly let them operate so freely right under our noses. I use the word mimic because they do not have or feel the same emotions normal or empathic people experience. As I stated earlier, in the world of mental health, they vacillate on whether or not they were born with this gene or if outside influences that make them that way, or both, and that will be understandable. They also claim sociopaths usually begin to exhibit their destructive behavior in their mid-teens, somewhere between 15 to 17 years old. From a basic reasoning standpoint, if that behavior begins to kick in most instances at those ages, to me, that means this gene is already there at birth. I'm not a doctor, but that sounds rational to me. I wish I could put in ink what I would like to do with every single one of these malevolent adult leeches. No judge, no jury. But I'm certain it would get me a lengthy jail sentence for making criminal threats. And you better believe that is where these people have a really high concentration, in jail. I believe that is one of the many reasons people come out worse off than when they went in. If you ask any seasoned man or woman of incarceration, they will almost immediately tell you people in jail are diabolical liars. If you're still not a believer, do your own research. Better yet, let me start you off with a book called Confessions of a Sociopath, A Life Spent Hiding in Plain Sight by M.E. Thomas. This is her alias. Reread the title and let that sink in. According to her book, this woman is a clinically diagnosed sociopath. She states the following in a chapter called Emotions and the Fine Art of Ruining People. Are you hearing me? Quote, ruining people. I love the way the phrase rolls around on my tongue and inside my mouth. Ruining people is delicious. We're all hungry, empaths and sociopaths. We want to consume. Sociopaths are uniformly hungry for power. Power is all that I have really cared about in my life. Physical power, the power of being desired or admired. Destructive power, knowledge, invisible influence. I wish I could tell stories of ruining people, but they're the stories most likely to get me sued. Situations that involve the police and restraining orders and personal lives derailed. Is this registering? If you were unfortunate enough to have had a lengthy relationship with these people as I did, the aftermath can be best described by the following from Jackson Mackenzie's book, Psychopath Free. The early stages of recovery are like a whirlwind, chaotic, volatile, and uncontrollable. During these stages, you likely don't even know that you've encountered a psychopath. You blame yourself and feel that you will never be happy again. You act out in ways you never even imagined. You don't yet understand how the abuse destroyed your confidence and identity because you don't even know to call it that. All you know is that you're hurting more than you ever have in your life. He goes on to state, your empathetic and perceptual abilities will temporarily collapse. The last quote is extremely important because if you find yourself in another relationship after dealing with either one of these types of sordid individuals, as I did, you won't realize the devastating loneliness you're inflicting on your partner because you cannot recognize the depth of your own empathy. Quite often, she, the new woman, mentioned how cold and numb I was. I never once even gave it serious thought nor the consequences that would come with the scorned woman. I couldn't grasp the weight behind her words or the grimace on her face as she would utter them. I didn't fully understand until I wrote this book. This is the devastation caused by one person. Can you imagine what they can do when one or more of them get together? Now does war, politics, religion, jail make sense to you? All of those things are designed to crush and disconnect you from your inner power, spirit, warrior, and identity. Empaths do not want to do these things on a daily basis throughout our lives. So who does that leave in charge of this planet? What's even worse is that after having such a devastating and traumatic experience, the universe in all its wisdom makes sure that you are now a magnet for more toxic personalities until you heal yourself. You need to be extremely careful on who you let in during your recovery. Jackson goes on to state, it's no mystery that survivors seem to attract more pathological people like magnets. As you frantically share your story, you latch on to the quickest and most sympathetic ear, anyone who claims to understand you. The problem is, these people do not always have your best interest at heart. Those willing to listen to your psychopathic story for hours on end are unfortunately not likely to be people who are truly invested in your recovery. They are most likely vultures. Vultures seem exceptionally kind and warm at first. They want to fix you and absorb your problems. They are fascinated by your struggles. But sooner or later, you will find yourself lost in another nightmare. They begin drowning you in unsolicited advice. They need constant praise and attention. You're never allowed to disagree with them. They feed off drama and an insatiable need to be appreciated by others. You will find that they lash out as you become happier. They perceive your progress as a threat to their control. They want to keep you in a perpetual state of dependency. They do not want you to seek help from anyone except them. It seems the universal creator is never looking to rid the world of these disgusting people. Looks like he's only concerned with using them to traumatize everyone else. In my opinion, sociopaths, psychopaths, and other personality disorders are the only reason the unhealthy programs for citizens have been operating for centuries. Religion, unprecedented taxing, sanctions, hunger, war. I think I can safely say most, if not all, of modern life's ills are worked through these callous and deceitful monsters. For further clarification of the last sentence, according to Benjamin Disraeli, the first Prime Minister of England, in a novel he published in 1844 called Coningsby, or The New Generation, he states, the world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. Now, I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to bore you guys to death, but I do want to say this about that portion. One person, woman, my experience with her caused me to write this book, an entire book. She wasn't the only reason I wrote the book. I wrote it because I grew up a Jehovah's Witness too. That's the majority of it. But one person, my experience with one woman for a year, that's how long it took me to finally break ties with her. The lying, the cold, dead stare, and always rationalizing her wrongdoing and minimizing once you catch her doing something. These people are excellent at this, and it's second nature to them. If you catch them doing something or lying, they're so quick to minimize it and move the conversation in a different direction. And you don't really get it at first. You're like, what's wrong with you? They know exactly what they're doing. One person. One of her go-to lines when, regardless of what you caught her doing, especially when there was no way out for her, was, "You're crazy. You're crazy." Ask any psychologist, psychiatrist if that's not a phrase always uttered by toxic people who've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar. And even, when you look back on these type of situations earlier on, the red flags are there, as they always are. You just don't know to look for them. That's why it's important. You just don't know what they are. That's why it's important that you get familiar with these personalities. And one of the things about this sociopathic chick is they have these very grandiose, grand ideas about themselves. And so I remember one day we were on the balcony talking, and we were talking about what it is we were trying to do in life and what we wanted to do. And she says, "I want to be a head football coach," right? So in my mind, I thought, that's probably never going to happen. But I'm not going to sit here and say this is never going to happen to somebody, that's new in my life and come off like that, right? But that was the first thought in my head. I was like, you tripping. And not to say that it can't happen, right? But the odds of it happening were probably very small. But that was one of those grandiose moments. She comes from a family of a massive amount of financial means, and one day she told me, "I have the money. People should wait on me and wait for me to decide what I want to do." And I said, no, it doesn't work that way, because I don't come from that, right? It doesn't work that way. You have to give people, you have to respect people. I think we're at a restaurant. So all these things were playing out, but the lying was most detrimental because she ruined, people that I grew up with. Let me tell you this part of it. Her identical twin sister was married to the dude that I grew up with. So we were always all hanging out in some way, shape, or form or another. So what she did was she created a barrier between me and him. She was cutting off all of, that whole relationship, right? And, he had some prior offenses, with me. And at the end of it all, I bounced his head off the pavement, just because I'd given him enough chances once they came out of prison. But she was constantly throwing fuel on that fire. Business relationships that I had, she wanted to buy a house. And I was like, look, I don't want to buy a house, but, let you talk to my guy. He's a professional. And if he wasn't, a real dude, she would have ruined that relationship. But she did ruin a relationship with my family. There are people, I have no idea what she said. Nobody will tell me. But there are people that to this day will not talk to me because of whatever she said to them. And it's even more frustrating when you have put your best foot forward in those kind of relationships. And this is also a part of it, right? They will run around town and tear your name apart after they've, crushed and minimized your identity and who you once were and your value and your self-worth. It's all done through it's all psychologically done. And then that's the final part of it. Once you figure it out and they can't manipulate you anymore, anybody who will listen, they just tear your name down. And people who have been through this, they know what I'm saying is true. Psychologists, psychiatrists, they know what I'm saying is true. And it's something that you want to keep people from ever going through if you don't have to deal with these people. And another thing when I look back on it was her eyes. She never blinked. She had, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why, right? I was suffering from losing my parents, but I just remember staring into those big old giant eyes, right? And it was the female version of looking at Ted Bundy's eyes. If you guys have ever seen that, that picture or that video of him with those crazy, she had them. You know what I mean? She had them.